about the drugs Intrinsa. In the film, it talks about well, there's a great scene at the end. I had no idea I would have so much fun watching the last bit of the film, and that is a FDA advisory committee discussion and presentation. That was a great scene. But at the end of the film, it talks about sure one battle was won in the States. But in the long scheme of war, in fact, the film pointed out that Intrinsa has got an EU approval and now is available worldwide online. My question is this: like, can you comment on your view of the off-label use of various drugs? Like, are we in a game where, oh, like if a drug get approved for whatever use, and then once it's out there, it can be legally produced in the States or in EU, then it's worldwide open because we have internet. You can order anything from the States or from Canada. Can you comment on that?
Well, in terms of getting back to your question about off-label use, I think that one of the tricky things about this is that if a drug is approved in the United States for one condition, a doctor can prescribe it for whatever condition they would like, and that's called off-label use.
Yeah.
It's actually illegal for pharmaceutical companies to promote off-label use.
Right, to advertise it.
To advertise it or to promote it in any way. But if there's this sense through articles in the media, through people like Laura Berman saying that something like Viagra works for women. And in fact, the Berman sisters did a Discovery show on Discovery Health saying that Viagra worked for women. It was a whole show, and this was before there had been enough clinical trials done on the drug. This was before any of it. And basically what happened was eventually Pfizer announced that the drug actually wasn't working in their clinical trials on women. And Laura Berman actually made a statement saying she still believed that Viagra would work. Now, what that means is that women will hear this, doctors will hear this, and they will start prescribing it for women. And I think that this does a big disservice, one, because there are side effects, and two, because there's no, Pfizer tried to get efficacy. And I think recently they've done some study that showed, like, if you're on an SSRI, so if you're on an antidepressant and you take Viagra, it may help you. So it's like adding one drug on top of another. But for the most part, Viagra has not shown efficacy. And the same with testosterone. I mean, Procter & Gamble tried as hard as they could. I mean, they narrowed down their tests of Intrinsa, which was a testosterone patch, down to women who not only had radical hysterectomy, but who were also taking replacement estrogen. And that's what it took to get any tiny little bit of efficacy, and not enough for the FDA to approve it. And in the FDA hearing, we learned that testosterone causes things like breast cancer. So there are side effects with that as well, and there's this misconception still. I mean, I know from talking to women my mother's age that there are a lot of women taking testosterone when they take replacement estrogen, thinking that this is going to help them with their sexual desire. But I think the evidence shows that if it does help, it's only, it's probably a small number of women and not that well.
You brought up a very serious issue here. The issue is, in a sense, if I hear you right, what the Bergman sisters and other movie stars or TV stars, what they need to do is just say that they believe and a drug worked, but without the backing of scientific research. Is that right? And then they can because they are not because they are not the drug company themselves. They can say, hey, well, I believe Viagra works for women. Even all the studies, including Pfizer, whichever drug companies own FDA medical trials has disproved, they can still say whatever they want, right?
Well, it's very complicated because if you look at someone like Laura Berman, she had worked for Pfizer. She had helped them with their clinical trials. And so she did, I imagine she was paid for that. She probably did have financial ties to them.
Right.
And I don't know what other types of financial ties she may have had. So it's a little tricky as to whether what she was doing was actually legal. That's a good question. In promoting these drugs when she has had financial ties to that drug company. But she may not have had financial ties in a way saying, you're going to go promote this, right? She may have just done it because she had worked on these clinical trials. That we don't really know. But I do think that any financial ties, as in the case with other doctors, financial ties in any way, they have to disclose it. So I think that would help the public had she done that more often. And so I think that right. So it's been sort of this battle, and we've seen it waged in the media, where they're trying to get us to change the way we think about sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And when Procter & Gamble thought that their testosterone patch was going to be approved, we saw in the media all of these news clips about how testosterone increased desire in women. And that and if you have low desire, it's because you don't have enough testosterone. Go see your doctor. This is the cause. And very little about sort of the relationship problems that could be causing it, or any other types of things that could cause low desire that have nothing to do with biology. And then it was really interesting this year, in June, there was another drug that went up before the FDA. It was an antidepressant that affected serotonin levels and dopamine levels. And all of a sudden we saw that low desire was caused by serotonin and dopamine problems, and that this was going to be the solution. And it was a lot of the same people, Cheryl Kinsberg, Laura Berman, the same people that we'd seen before saying it was testosterone, now coming back and telling us that this was something that you needed an SSRI for, a serotonin inhibitor, to help you. And so there's this real subtle way that they are trying to convince the public that their sexual problems are caused by something biological, and it's whatever that drug is going to address. So if it's testosterone, it's a testosterone problem. If it's a serotonin inhibitor, it's a serotonin issue. So I think we have to be very, very careful when we hear these types of things to do a little digging into whether or not this is really scientifically sound.
Right. So do you feel your film and the way that you're talking to reporters from around the world and talking to me here, do you feel this, the spreading of the knowledge actually help women understand more of the issues, or you feel very like it's a stone in a big ocean? It's not getting the effect you want. How do you feel about it?
Well, it's so hard to know, but I mean, I think that the important thing is to try and do the best that I can to try and get the information out there. I mean, I am up against, with this drug in June, we were up against, when I say we, Leonore Tiefer was working on this, the New View campaign was working on this. There was a lot of us working to try and counteract this really assault on women's sexuality, saying that, now you need an SSRI. And by the way, the drug wasn't approved. It really didn't work very well at all. And the side effects were quite, were kind of extreme too. So it was not approved, unanimously rejected. But they had spent millions of dollars prior to this using Ogilvy PR, a huge, PR company, to try and drum up this idea that this is what it was. So, we're up against some very big, powerful forces here with a lot of economic backing. But sometimes you just hope the truth rings out over, something where people are trying to be manipulated.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough battle. I mean, when you are seeing stuff on TV shows and whatnot, like how many people actually go dig deeper on trying to find the medical study behind it? Well, 43% of women. Well, it's on Oprah. It must be right. And yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's why it's so important that we try and hold these celebrities accountable, because it's quite serious. I mean, okay, we think, sex, it's not a big deal, so what? But actually, it's quite serious if you start to think you have female sexual dysfunction. I mean, that sounds like an STD, it sounds like something that, and like, okay, you go out on a date. When are you going to tell your date? You have female sexual dysfunction. It's quite deep. I mean, our sexuality is so deep, and when you start getting in there and trying to make people think they have a problem, that needs to be seriously looked at. I mean, sex is something that should be treated like it's sacred, not something that we can just go around and start exploiting people and telling them they need to perform in a certain way. And there's nothing that says you should be having 25 orgasms a month to be normal, or 50 sexual thoughts a day to be normal. There's no norm when it comes to sexuality. So a lot of this is fabricated, and in fact, it's hurt the pharmaceutical industry in trying to come up with their clinical trials to really find, figure all of that out, because it is so individual and so different.
Yeah. There was one moment in the film that chills my spine. It's the segment of the orgasmatron, the needle through the spine. That was like, and the potential potential problem for the lady. Tell me about it. How you feel when you saw that segment and like your relationship with sorry, I forgot her name, but yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the hardest scenes for me to film because I was watching this take place in the operating room and I was actually filming it, and they were putting an electrode in her spine. It was actually a pain management device that they were trying this off-label use for, another off-label use, and doing clinical trials for this off-label use of it. And the problem was that Dr. Malloy was having trouble finding the spot, and it went on much longer than it was supposed to. And so I started to feel very nervous about what I was witnessing, and almost, was like, stop. But, as a filmmaker, that's always that tough decision about what to do. I mean, this was something that the people who were participating in this study had chosen to do, so it wasn't for me to intervene. Yeah. But, luckily Charlotta was not seriously injured. And I was really surprised to later learn when I was interviewing her after this procedure had been done that she actually didn't have sexual problems in a serious way. She was actually quite normal. She just couldn't have an orgasm during intercourse. And most women don't have orgasms during intercourse without clitoral stimulation. So, in fact, when she discovered that she was normal, when I told her this, she started getting up and dancing around, happy, that there's really nothing wrong with her. Right. She shouldn't have been in that clinical trial at all, given the situation.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest message in the film, that most of the time there's nothing wrong with the women. And of course, to me, the way I look at it is also the look on the medical ethics and the pharmacological industry, the ton of money behind it, and the people who are willing to say things for their own personal reason, if not financial reasons. So, has the making of this film actually turned you into a lifelong advocate of the issues that you cover, or you are ready to move on and to make your next documentary now?
Well, I keep thinking I'm going to move on, but the issue just keeps dragging me in. I mean, it goes on and on. It's incredible. I mean, the drug companies haven't stopped. I mean, of course not. They see this as a huge market, and they're just chomping at the bit to get something approved here. And part of the reason they're chomping at the bit to get something approved here is because they can get so much more for the pharmaceuticals, and because we have direct-to-consumer advertising. So they're going to be able to advertise these drugs and this new idea of sexual performance. And so, it's hard for me to step away given all that I've been working on all these years. But I do have some other projects brewing, and we'll see what happens.
Right. So let me ask you some technical documentarian type questions. How many hours of footage did you end up shooting for the film? And what was the one moment where you find it's most difficult cutting? Like what was one scene that you wish you could keep it in the film?
Actually, one of the scenes that was hard was sort of talking about this connection. There were so many doctors who have been working for the pharmaceutical industry and appearing on television and not disclosing it. And we had a whole scene sort of going through a bunch of these doctors and sort of the main doctor behind FSD. But in the end, we decided to focus on the most public face of female sexual dysfunction, and that was the Berman sisters. But that was a hard scene to cut because I did kind of want to keep these doctors in there so people could be warned when they saw them on television to be a little more skeptical about what they were saying.
Right, yeah. Maybe put that in a bonus scene or put it in your website. But so how many hours did you end up shooting for the whole film? Like, are we talking about hundreds of hours, like 200-300?
Yes, we ended up shooting about 300 hours for the documentary, and I'm probably going to cut another documentary out of it. That's more looking at the pleasure aspect of this and less on sort of the pharmaceutical industry. Oh, okay.
So a different angle of the pleasure side of things. Right. So okay, yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Liz, and it has been a very enjoyable chat with you, and I've learned a lot. I hope more people can will watch your film. In Canada, we have it on Passionate Eye online. So anyone, I guess, in Canada can go to CBC's website. Do you know in the States, is PBS putting it online, or what are some other countries' arrangement?
It's not online in the United States, but it is online in some other countries. If you go to our website, you can see it's orgasminc.org, where those other countries are in those stations, and you can look it up and see if it's available.
All right, that's cool. Well, thank you very much, Liz, for chatting with me today.
Thank you, Captain. I really enjoyed talking to you.